Hi everyone. I hope you all are doing great and are having a wonderful day. So, welcome to today's session. And today we are having a really great session, which is about micro trauma and everyday stress. And I'm really grateful that this session is being hosted by Miss Stuti Sood, and she is our consultant psychologist, and she will be telling us about the topic. And yeah, and I'll just quickly explain you about how Positivity works. So, Positivity is a Singapore headquartered mental health organization. We are committed to making quality mental health care and making it more accessible and affordable for everyone. So, our aim is to connect and build the right expertise with right individuals, and our platform is really creating awareness and importance around mental health topics, and today is one of them. So, a little bit about the topic is that micro trauma and everyday stress, we hear the trauma a lot, like the word itself, but we often ignore the everyday stresses, repeated stressful situations that can gradually affect our mental health. So, I'm really glad that Mr. Disut is handling this topic, and we are really delighted to have her with us today. So, without any further ado, let's warmly welcome her. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for such a nice welcome. And like you already discussed our topic today, so it's going to be micro traumas and everyday stressors. So often what happens is when we talk about traumas, we often think it's like this big, extreme, intense, and emotionally painful event always, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes everyday circumstances, maybe as small as, being compared to your siblings, friends, peers, can leave a very, very big impact. And that is what we're going to cover today. So this is something that is very important. And most of us in our daily lives, we face certain things which we feel like they're very, very small. And sometimes they're unnoticeable as well. But today, you and me, we're going to shed some light on that. And hopefully, the session brings a lot of clarity for everybody out there. So, with any further delay, let me just start by sharing my screen so that everybody can see. Okay. Okay. All right. So about positivity, you're already very well aware of positivity, like our team already discussed with you. It's a Singapore-based headquarters, and positivity is an online platform that you can choose for your mental health journey, right? Okay. So here is a little bit of some kind of, help for you so that you don't have to roam around here and there looking for the website, how to reach to, our esteemed team at Positivity. So this is a QR code. Please scan and check out our website. It's really great. If you require any kind of help, we're always there. Okay, so without any delay, let's begin. Okay, so these are a couple of things that we offer at Positivity. So there are individual sessions, there are group therapy sessions. You can even gift a session if you want somebody to enjoy this journey of mental towards good mental health. You can even gift a session. And at Positivity, we are available 24/7 to help you out. So please go and check out our website and let's begin. So today for this webinar, I've made this for you to understand that exactly what we're going to cover. So today we'll be understanding about what micro traumas are, what is the difference between trauma, micro trauma, and the little t trauma, because I am sure that many of us have heard about these terms, maybe through social media or maybe through somebody else, but it's important to clarify the difference, right? Okay, so the next important point is why do these micro traumas often are overlooked? Because they're very small and they're very, unnoticeable sometimes. So we want to know why do we ignore these? Okay. So then we'll talk about emotional overload related to everyday stressors, what it looks like, what everyday stressors are, and how can you identify emotional overload, right? And lastly, we're going to talk about the impact and the practical strategies that what we're here for at the end of the day, right? Okay, so let's begin by understanding about micro traumas. So micro traumas, like I told you, they are very small and somewhat unnoticeable events, but they're very emotionally distressing because, for example, if somebody keeps criticizing you, maybe once it's okay, maybe twice it's okay, but if that keeps happening again and again and again, it's going to leave a very big impact on your psychological and emotional well-being. Imagine being overlooked every day at work, or being compared to certain people every single day, or being criticized, or facing those sarcastic comments about yourself repeatedly. Imagine how would that make you feel, right? So these are called micro traumas. They're very small events, but the impact is very, very significant, right? So what happens is, when you keep having the repeated exposure again and again and again, you keep having these comments, you keep having these um, comparisons being made, or so many other things. What it's going to do is, it's going to make you feel like you're emotionally exhausted, because how will you fight these with every single day, right? You're going to feel emotionally exhausted. You're going to go into that overthinking spiral. Okay, what if the person saying this about me is actually true? You're going to start questioning yourself, and it would create a lot of disturbance in your life. It would add to a lot of anxiety in your life, right? So these are the things that we often overlook when we talk about the micro traumas, right? Okay, so basically, stress बढ़ जाता है. There is an impact on your interpersonal relationships. Maybe you're not able to do your work as well if you're being overlooked at work all the time. If you feel like somebody close to you keeps making sarcastic comments or anything like that, off and on, off and on, off and on, you will not be able to have a very healthy relationship with them, right? So if I summarize it, micro traumas are very small, but the impact is very, very big. And in the next slide, I will show you all the examples of micro traumas so that we understand what they actually look like, right? What can be the micro traumas that we face every day. Okay, so here I've made this very, very easy for everybody to understand, right? So constant criticism, negative comments, feeling emotionally ignored on or unheard, repeated rejections. So if somebody keeps rejecting you, or somebody keeps making comments about you, or sometimes we get very, very sarcastic about each other, and then we say, oh, you're overacting, you're overreacting, you shouldn't feel like that. It's okay. It's fine. It was just a joke, right? Why are you taking it to your heart? But having that kind of comment, or having that kind of environment around you every day or repeatedly, is going to impact your mental health, no matter what, because you cannot take that comment very well every time. There would be a point where you would actually start thinking about it, right? Or maybe, like I already talked about, being compared to other people. So there are a lot of times, as simple as, if you don't get good marks and somebody else gets better marks than you, right? So sometimes your parents or your family members say, oh, look, they always do so well, why can't you do like that? Oh, look, your siblings are doing so well than you. Oh, look, your friends are, at certain stage, why are you not at that stage? So that kind of comparison is also something that can add to your stress, because it will lead to a very big spiral. Okay, why am I not there, right? So that is something, one of the things, right, that acts as a micro trauma. Okay, so when we're talking about workplace stress, sometimes you can do a lot of work, but still that work can go unnoticed, right? So what happens is that maybe you're working so hard for a couple of months, and when the time for promotions came, you're not the one who's considered. And maybe this happens more often than you think, right? Or maybe every time you put 100%, but you don't get that kind of appreciation, or maybe just well done, a small well done for your work, right? So that is something that we can call micro traumas at your workplace. Okay. So if you talk about relationships, sometimes in relationships also, we say a lot of things about each other. And then we say, okay, oh, I was just being honest, or I was just kidding around. You shouldn't take it to your heart. I was just, in front of friends, I was just making a joke. But if you keep doing that more and more, your partner or the person who you are making the joke about is going to feel bad, right? They're going to start questioning about themselves. And it would ultimately lead to lowest self-esteem, because when we hear so many comments about ourselves, it ultimately makes us question that, okay, are we like this? Is it something that we're going through? Is it something bad? Should I change? It kind of puts you in that spiral. Okay. Bullying, teasing, sarcastic remarks, like I told you. Sometimes we just say, oh, I was just kidding. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to do this. But the impact is so much bigger than we can ever imagine, right? And nowadays, a lot of us, we are very much active on social media, and we see a lot of things on social media, and we see a lot of comments on social media as well. So, for example, if you put up something and you get a lot of comments that, oh, okay, you didn't do good, or, why did you upload this? If somebody comes and tells you, why did you upload this picture? Not good. Even that kind of remark can leave a very big impact, right? Okay, so feeling unsupported during emotional distress, of course, if you can't express your emotions fully, if you can't express your feelings when you want to, that is also kind of micro trauma, because then you're painting up and suppressing your feelings, right? And that's not healthy for you. So these are the kind of things that kind of more or less concludes everyday micro traumas that you and me, we both go through. But the impact is very much real. The impact is very much, not minimized. It's very, very important to understand that these are not something that you should be overlooking and feel like, okay, it's okay, right? And this is what this session is all about. And that is why I think this topic is very important. Okay, so now that we understand micro traumas, can I move ahead, I think, right? Okay, so I don't know how many of you have heard about this, but when we hear about the word trauma, all we can think about is, oh my God, something as big as an accident, something as big as a disaster happening, right? But that's not the case always. So trauma can be divided into three parts. Okay. So then you have the big T trauma, or the big trauma that I'm talking about right now, the intense and extreme event. The little T trauma, not that intense or big. And then comes the micro trauma. So this is very important for us to understand, because more or less we kind of put everything into the big T trauma, right? And sometimes we don't even recognize the little T or micro traumas, right? Okay, so like I already told you, the big tree trauma is the major traumatic event. It's something that is very, very intense and very, very extreme, rather. Okay. Little t trauma is something which is more or less personally distressing, not a very big event like an abuse or a disaster or an accident. It could be something that you're personally going through, but it is distressing enough, right? And micro traumas, like I already discussed, small repeated emotional events all the time that, they are not so big, right? They are even smaller than the little t trauma, right? Okay. So the impact of the big T trauma is, of course, intense and overwhelming, because it's a very major event in your life. So the bigger the event, the bigger impact it's going to leave, right? Little T trauma is emotionally painful. So, for example, you're going through a divorce. It's more personal and distressing for you, but it's not a big trauma, right? So, it is emotionally painful for you, right? So, it is the little T trauma. And again, micro traumas, they become a problem more or less with gradual exposure. One or two sarcastic comments is not considered as micro traumas. For it to be a micro trauma, it has to be repeated exposure to those comments. So gradually and repeated exposure is a very important key here to understand micro traumas. Okay, so the big T traumas are very easy to recognize. Maybe it's an accident, maybe it's an abuse, maybe it's a disaster happening. Very, very easy to recognize. Little T traumas can be overlooked. Like, for example, if somebody at your workplace is going through a divorce, you may not know unless and until the person shares with you. It's distressing for them, but you may overlook it. You may not ever know about their stressor, right? And micro traumas are more or less unnoticed because we feel like, oh, not a big deal, you know, it's not a big deal, or it's not so important to stress about, right? Okay, so example, like I already told you, big T trauma, abuse, disaster, accident. When we talk about little T trauma, maybe bullying, maybe repeated failure on onto something, maybe disappointment related to certain events, divorce, right? These are something which are a little personal to you. Okay. And when we're talking about micro traumas, again, criticism, rejection, sarcastic comments, being overlooked, right? Uh, Not being able to express yourself. These are all micro traumas. The effect of big T traumas or the big traumas is very immediate. Something happens and it's going to be traumatic for you, right? Very, very soon enough, right? Little T traumas, yes, the impact is personal. And yeah, it can be emotionally stressful, but the longer it goes on, then it becomes more intense by nature. Okay. And micro traumas, they become stressful or a big problem when they're accumulated, or they keep happening again and again and again. Like I told you, when we talk about micro traumas, repeated exposure is the key, right? So I think this is very important to understand because there are certain books that talk about trauma, but having a clear differentiation is very important, because sometimes we put everything under the big T trauma and we don't understand how other traumas look like, right? So I hope this picture makes it clear for everybody. Okay. So by far we understood about traumas. How do micro traumas look like? What are micro traumas and what is the difference between this, right? Okay. So next we come to the most important questions, that if these are very much significant, and if we're talking about micro traumas that we have an entire session planned on it, so why do we often overlook these? And how come they are being overlooked in our daily life? So if they're so easy to recognize, right? So first and foremost is, more or less, because these events are very, very small, we sometimes feel like not that big of a deal, I shouldn't be feeling like this. It was maybe just a promotion. Why do I feel like this? It happens. It was maybe just a comment. Why should I overreact on this? So because the nature of micro trauma is that they're very, very small and sometimes insignificant. That is why there is a very big chance that we often overlook these and we move on in our life. And people around us also tell us that, okay, you should move on. Don't stay stuck here, Okay, so the impact develops gradually, right? So, like I already mentioned, maybe one or two comments, maybe one or two incidences at work are not going to be making your life difficult, or are not going to be characterized or labeled as micro traumas. Repeated exposure is something that makes them micro traumas. So, the impact is very slow and gradual. There would be a point that you feel like this happens every single day or this happens very often, right? So this is why micro traumas are often overlooked, because immediate impact nahi hai. Sudden impact is not the key here. It's the gradual impact, right? Emotional distress is more or less normalized in today's world. If I'm talking about social media, so we are very, very what should I say, okay with having negative feedback, with having negative comments, and we always feel like it's okay, it's fine, we don't have to take it to heart. It's somebody's thought process. Why should I deal like this, be like this? Okay. And if we talk about parents as well, like I told you about the comparison portion with siblings and friends, we often feel like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, they are my elders, they're my parents, I shouldn't be feeling like this. And even if you tell somebody about these, they'll be like, it's fine, why are you overreacting? This is something that we hear more and more every day. It's okay, let it go with the flow. Why are you overreacting about this is not something that requires your energy. All these things we hear more or less, right? And people around us, they keep telling us the same thing. It's fine, it's okay, it's fine, but it's not fine. There comes a point when things stop becoming normal and when things actually take a very different turn. and the things that we consider fine have a very, very big impact, right? Okay, so people may dismiss their own emotional experiences. So imagine if I'm talking about social media right now, I told you about Instagram, right? Instagram, Facebook, we all are active on social media. So if we put up something and we feel like, okay, theek hai, why are people commenting about this? It's just a photo, but I shouldn't take their comments to my heart. It's somebody's own opinion. So what happens is we're minimizing our own experience. If we're overlooked at work, or maybe if your partner makes more sarcastic comments about you, you often feel like it's okay. I shouldn't feel like this. This is not something I maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe something is wrong with me. This is how we treat ourselves more or less. The world maybe may see it differently, but if I'm talking about ourselves, sometimes we are the ones who minimize our experiences by saying, maybe I'm overthinking about it. I shouldn't do this. It's not a big deal, right? Okay. So daily stresses are harder to recognize as harmful. If you come and tell me, oh, my partner made a very sarcastic comment about it, or if you tell somebody that, okay, I did not like it, they'll be like, so what? They didn't harm you. They didn't do anything. They didn't physically harm you, right? Or maybe you feel like something at work is not going on your way, or maybe you feel like, you put in a lot of effort, but you're not being considered. And you feel like it's okay, not the end of the world, right? Isme kya hai? This is not a big deal. Why are you feeling like this? So, more or less, these are often overlooked because daily stressors we don't consider as harmful unless and until, we don't see like, oh my God, such a big event happened. We don't understand the impact of the event. Okay, lack of awareness about the cumulative impact of emotional stress. So I think the session itself is the first step towards awareness, because if you're talking about it, it means that micro traumas are a big deal, right? So I think lack of awareness is also something that makes it feel like, not a big deal. So I think sessions like these, and maybe, all the hard work that the people are doing out there to make these things come into light are very, very important, because unless and until we are not aware about these things, we will not be able to identify. So everybody who's watching this session, I think by now that what micro traumas look like, and maybe even an hour ago you didn't have that kind of clarity. So I think awareness is very important, because once you're aware, only then you can identify micro traumas and stressors, and only then we can do something about it, right? And the effects come into light after the impact has already happened. Like, you're already emotionally exhausted, you're overthinking, you're into anxiety. Now you feel like, okay, now you rewind and think about all the small things that happen, right? So I think this sums up why these micro traumas are often overlooked or are not considered in everyday life. Okay. Okay, so now we come to the very next part of our webinar. So, along with micro traumas, we're also talking about everyday stressors and emotional overload. Okay, so everyday stressors are basically pressures and challenges we all face in our daily life. It could be related to your academics, it could be related to your relationships, work, responsibilities, anything, right? So, all the stress that you feel in your daily life, maybe it's the deadlines at work, maybe it's constant fights in a relationship, maybe it's time management or something, anything that adds to the pressure, right? That can be considered as an everyday stress or a routine stress. Okay. So it's okay to take a little bit of stress now and then, because without stress, we'll not be able to work. But when it becomes very constant and unmanageable, then it can lead to emotional overload. It's okay to have a few deadlines, a couple of days, right? But not meeting deadlines more or less every day, that is something that can add to a lot of stress, and that could lead to emotional overload, right? Having a few fights in a relationship now and then, very much normal, and it happens all the time. But constantly having fights can lead to emotional overload. Okay. So when you're talking about emotional overload, it means that you feel like mentally and emotionally very, very overwhelmed by stress. You feel like you cannot take this anymore. Emotional overload is that when mentally and emotionally you feel like you're done, you cannot take this anymore, and that continuous stress keeps putting a lot of pressure on you. So, again, daily stressors with repeated exposure can lead to emotional overload and impact on your mental health. So now that we're talking about emotional overload, it's important for us to understand how it looks like, how to identify that, if you're going through emotional overload. So number one is you're always tired. You don't feel like you have the energy to do certain things. You feel like you're very much exhausted, right? And your body feels heavy and you feel like you don't want to do anything. Okay. Small things, they irritate you. Your mood is not good. And even, maybe as small as your parent, your loved one saying something to you, or maybe somebody saying something to you, it's going to trigger your mood. It's going to trigger your emotions like anything. And you'll be irritated, you'll be angry, and you may keep fighting with everybody. Okay. You feel disconnected, means that you feel like you're done. You get this feeling that I don't want to do this. I don't feel anything physically or mentally. I'm unable to feel anything. I feel like I'm disconnected from certain things. I'm not able to make the connection, right? Your mind won't shut off. You'll be in a spiral. You'll keep thinking. It will lead to overthinking, and even the smallest of the things can trigger your overthinking. And you'll be like, okay, what if this happens? And we get into the pattern of what ifs very, very soon. What if this happens? What if that happens? Oh my God, this is such a big deal that happened, right? So mind is not shutting off. You are not able to relax basically. Procrastination. So if, for example, if deadlines are something that's adding to a lot of stress, you will feel like, I don't want to do this work. You will procrastinate to the maximum that you can. Maybe you will delay your tasks. Maybe you will be like, I'll do it tomorrow. I don't have the energy to do it right now. So you'll procrastinate about a lot of things that keep adding stress on, the things that actually matter. Or it could be the other way. Because of stress, you're procrastinating to make maybe taking some time off for yourself, right? You're procrastinating to getting into your hobbies, into the things that you like, right? Okay. So you feel pressure to hold it together. You feel like everything is falling apart. You only have, you feel like kya kya karu? How can I handle everything at once, right? So it feels very, very difficult, and you feel like, I don't know how to keep everything together. I don't know how to keep working through this. And it becomes very, very exhausting for you. Okay. So lack of motivation. So when you see, you're not unable to do something, or something keeps adding a lot of stress, for example, deadlines, your motivation to do the work would decrease day by day. And there would be a point where you feel like, I have zero motivation to do this work, or I have very minimum motivation to do this work, and I don't want to do it anymore. You feel numb. So if repeated exposure to everyday stressors, it keeps on happening again and again and again, you will feel like at a point comes where you feel like you don't even understand what's going on, right? So you feel numb, always having to convince yourself that you're fine. This is something I think we all do, that, it's okay, it's fine. I have to deal with this. It's okay. I'm fine. I got this. I got this. I cannot be like this. This is not me. I'm fine. I'll hold it together. Right? So you're trying to convince yourself that you're fine, when the actual truth is that maybe you're not fine. Right? So these are a few signs that can help you identify emotional overload. And if you feel like any of these signs are relevant for you, or you can connect to these, so please seek professional help, or please talk to somebody. Okay. Hmm. Okay. So now we discussed a lot about traumas. Discussed a lot about different types of traumas. We discussed what micro traumas look like, right? And of course, we even discussed about the everyday stressors. Now, very important point here, how to understand and identify the impact of the micro traumas. We've been discussing about micro traumas have a very big impact in your life, right? It's a very influential impact in your life. So let's see how micro traumas can actually impact your mental health. Okay. So repeated exposure could lead to a lot of emotional stress, right? So you, for example, if I give you an example right now, if you hear sarcastic comments from somebody, repeated exposure to those sarcastic comments are going to make you feel like, what is wrong? Am I actually like this? Why do they keep saying all this about me? Right? Or, if you're being overlooked at work, you're going to feel like, why am I putting so much effort? Right? So it's going to add a lot of emotional strain, emotional stress in your life, anxiety and emotional fatigue. So you're always anxious because of micro traumas. आपकी anxiety trigger हो सकती है, emotionally exhausting हो सकता है if you keep thinking about these again and again and again, and you keep facing about these micro traumas again. So it could be very, very exhausting for you emotionally rather than physically, because then these make you even overthink a lot of things, and we get stuck in the spiral of negative thought process, which is emotionally draining for everybody. Okay. Increase self doubt. So you kind of start doubting yourself that what if the comments that I'm hearing are true? Are they true? Why am I being overlooked? Is my work not good enough? Okay, if I'm being compared to somebody, why am I not good enough? You start doubting yourself. You start doubting your qualities. You start doubting your strengths. You start doubting your uh, inner strength, right? So you start looking at the negatives about yourself. Okay, maybe I'm not good at this. That is why this is happening. Or maybe I'm not confident enough. That is why it's happening, right? So you kind of ignore the positive sides of yourself. You start ignoring the positive aspects, and your focus is more on the things that people say about you or things that are happening to you every day, right? So you kind of get into that thought process of doubting yourself. And what it would lead to is, when we doubt ourselves, we are unable to perform. Our productivity decreases, our motivation decreases, and the basically the sparkle that you have as a human being, it decreases when self-doubt prevails for a very, very long time, because everybody has their own strengths and everybody adds a lot to this world. So that's why I call it the sparkle of or everybody, the individual. So you kind of lose that when you're constantly in that self-doubt phase. Okay. Right. So emotionally overwhelmed and sensitive, you start becoming very sensitive to these things. Repeated exposure to certain comments, repeated exposure to certain things make you feel sensitive, right? That you feel like you're impacted very much by these comments, you feel like, I shouldn't feel like this, but why am I feeling like this? You get more sensitive to certain things. Maybe the comment was very, very small, but the impact it had on you was very, very big, right? So your sensitivity kind of increases. Difficulty coping with stress. So everyday stressors, sometimes you don't even identify these. So, and you don't know how to deal with this. And then it kind of makes you question everything. It kind of makes you feel like, how do I deal with this? What do I say? And you're always in that mode of, I cannot deal with this. How am I supposed to deal with this mode? Right? Okay, so reduced emotional well-being, of course, the impact of micro traumas is ultimately on your well-being and mental health. So repeated exposure leads to a lot of stress, and that would actually lead to reduced emotional well-being. Okay. Okay, so these are the impact of micro traumas, right? So this kind of helps you identify about micro traumas. And if you are somebody who can relate to these, again, I would say please consult somebody professional. They can help you deal with this. We are always here for you for anything and everything. And it's okay to reach out. It's always best to reach out to somebody. Okay. Okay, so the last part for today's webinar is what we're here for. Now that we understand about micro traumas, the big question still remains, क्या करें इसके बारे में? What should we do about it? What can we do about it? Okay. So now that you know what micro traumas are, you know how they look like, you know what impact do they create, let's come to what you can do for yourself. So first and foremost is identify and acknowledge these small stressors. We often overlook, like we already discussed in the previous slide, that it is very easy to overlook these, but to identify these stressors is very important, because you can only work on something when you know that it's happening, or when you can identify something, right? So please start identifying, please start looking for certain things if you feel like, they are creating an impact on your mental health. So instead of ignoring, identify and acknowledge. Avoid minimizing your emotional experiences. Uh, maybe once or twice, if something happens, that's okay. But if something is happening again and again, please don't think, okay, I should not, it's okay. I should not feel like this. Why am I overreacting? Please don't think like this. Don't minimize your emotional experiences. Rather, see how those make you feel. Only then we can, once we identify, this is how it makes me feel. It's a big deal for me. Only then we can work on this. So please don't minimize your emotional experiences. Next, express your emotions in a healthy way. You don't have to go out into the world fighting with everybody, expressing your anger all the time. There are certain healthy ways where you can express your emotions, like, for example, journaling, writing down on a piece of paper or on a diary about how you feel, what happened, how did that make you feel, and everything. It may helps you feel a little bit of, relaxed. Venting out, even on a piece of paper, helps you feel lighter, much lighter. Talking to somebody who you can share these things with, somebody who you trust enough, or maybe, again, a professional, will help you ease that intense emotions, right? Reflection means looking at how it's making you feel, right? What happened and आपको कैसा लगा, क्या लगा, how it is making you feel. How do you see these things? How do you see these events? Is something that is good for you and healthy for you. Okay, relaxation techniques, practicing grounding and relaxation techniques. So, doing a lot of relax, sometimes just taking a deep breath in helps you clear your mind, a little bit. So practicing relaxation techniques in your daily life, practicing grounding techniques in your daily life can help you ease that emotional intensity, right? Emotional stress very much. And if you don't know about these techniques, you can take somebody's help. You can ask a professional. We are always here to help you, and we can teach you relaxation grounding techniques as well. Okay. Setting healthy boundaries in relationships and environments. So if you feel like somebody is crossing a boundary, or somebody is making comments about you, or somebody is doing something that is not acceptable to you, you can set your boundary. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you're going out and fighting with the world. Setting a boundary in healthy ways is very much possible. And if you don't know how to do that, again, you can seek professional help, and you'll understand what healthy boundaries are and how can you apply them to your real life. Taking regular emotional mental breaks. Okay, so taking some mental breaks is very much important. Taking a break from your daily life is very important. Taking a break from all these micro stresses is very, very important. Self-care. You can engage yourself into self-care. What would you do to soothe yourself? Are there any hobbies or activities that you can do, right? Are there any recreational activities that you can get into? Are there any hobbies that you're fond of, right? Or maybe as simple as spending time with your family, spending time in nature, spending time with people who you love. Maybe that can also be a part of self-care. So doing something for yourself, doing something good for yourself, that is something we talk about when we talk about self-care. Building a supportive and emotionally safe relationship. So having people in your life who you can trust, who you can confide in, is very, very important, right? Okay. Challenging negative self-talk and self-blame. So instead of thinking about, start putting yourself into that self-doubt phase, talking like, oh my God, I am like this. I'm not a good person. Maybe I'm not unable to do this work. Maybe they're right, right? So instead of doing this, think about it that, is it something that you cannot do? Are you actually a bad person, or are you just thinking about it because of certain things, right? So challenging that negative self talk or that self blame is very important, because we have to understand it's not true. So when you imagine, when you challenge that, you kind of get to the truth that, is it actually true what they're talking about me, you know so this is something that is very important, is challenge your negative self talk. Get evidence for what you think is true. Okay. And ultimately, lastly, seek professional support when stress becomes overwhelming, which I've been saying this throughout the seminar. And I feel like it's very important that even if you feel like you cannot deal with this all alone, that's okay. We are always here for you. You can just come on to the website positivity.com and look for a therapist who's very much suitable to your needs. And please talk to somebody. Please talk to a professional. It's very, very important sometimes, and it's okay. It's okay. There are certain things in life that we cannot deal with all alone, and asking for help is not a bad thing. So this concludes my take on micro traumas, and I hope that through this webinar, you and me, we both of us, I think, we understood a lot about micro traumas today, and this was all from my end. And I hope even if this webinar made even a 5% of change, that I would be very happy with that. And I hope this webinar was very, very helpful for you. And in the end, if you have any questions that you would like to address, please leave the comments below so that we can address your questions regarding the session or micro traumas or everyday stresses. So thank you very, very much for staying with me for so long, listening to me. And please keep joining these webinars, because awareness is something that we do from our end as professionals, and we would like to help you with everything, and we would like for you to understand everything. So please keep tuning into these webinars, and please keep joining. And thank you so much for staying with me for so long. And yes, this is the Positivity logo. You can check out our Instagram, you can check out our Facebook, you can check out on LinkedIn, YouTube, and you have the link below. And I'll even share my screen. I'll show you how Positivity website looks like and how you can find your suited therapist. Yes, over to you. Yes, over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Stuti ma'am, for this wonderful session. And I believe all of us have learned quite a bit of what micro traumas is. And repeatedly, something happens that accumulate our stressors and even leads us to adverse problems in the real life. So this is very important to tell us and make us aware about how it works and what we should do as well, and how to identify this as well. So really, really thankful for this session. I hope everyone had a wonderful time listening to this and learned something new today as well. I definitely did, because trauma is such a vast concept that we don't cover micro traumas as such, even in our colleges or our textbooks. So this was very much needed. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. In the end, I would just like to show our audience how our website looks like and how they can find this suited therapist, if that's okay. If we have a little bit of time, can I do that?
Yeah, yeah, sure, ma'am.
Okay, all right. I'll just show you what positivity looks like. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Is it okay?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. So this is how, let me yeah, I think you can see my screen. So this is the Positivity website, and you can just log on to positivity.com. Here you have a list of positivity psychologists. When you click on this, you see our very much esteemed team working with all the different kind of issues. You can just click on book now, or if you want certain details, please click here on view details, and you can learn a lot more about the therapist, and if that therapist is actually suited according to your needs and what you're looking for, you can click here and actually see their profiles, their available timings, how long can the sessions be, if they offer any packages, what do they work with, what kind of therapies do they use, everything. And like this, you can explore our website and explore all the psychologists. You can see my website, you can see my profile here as well. Okay. And one thing is that down here at Positivity, you can just click on blogs and articles, right? Just a second. Yes. Yeah. So what happens when you click on blogs is you can read about what the psychologists they usually write about, because all these are everyday problems. And if you feel like reading about certain things, so here we have a lot of great blogs. You can read about these and just get to know more about how mental health works. Right. So you can explore our website. It's great. You can actually see the services we offer, one-on-one therapy sessions, gift a session that I was talking to you about. If you want to
Yeah.
gift a session to somebody, right? Here you have the resources of how it works and about positivity. If you want to learn about positivity, you can just come on here and you can see all these things about the website, about the entire organization. So this is what our website looks like. So please explore once. That is what I would say. Please go on this website, explore once. And if you feel like, please get in touch with your suited therapist, right? And we are always here for you. All you have to do is just book a session, and we're always here for you, helping out through everything and anything. So thank you for joining in, and that would be all from my side.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for showing our website. And yes, everyone, you can book a session. And as you can see, we have a lot of psychologists onboarded as well, from not even just India, but from different countries as well. So make sure that you have the right expertise with you. So do log in. And thank you so much for this session. And we'll see you in the next one.